With a completed rent table and rent matrix as applicable, you are ready to move on to Section 3 of the tutorial. Section 3 reviews the tabs that outline the anticipated expenses for the year. It also describes how to submit your budget via Box.com. Now that you have finished the rent table or rent matrix, you will complete the Capital Expenditures tab. Enter capital expenses to be completed over the next 12-month budget cycle. Try to keep this list exclusive to those expenses that you anticipate paying for from the replacement reserve account. If you anticipate paying for some items from operations that have included it in the budget, do not include here, as well as the expense will be doubled up. Capital expenses can range from replacing refrigerators to replacing windows. Remember to reference your most recent inspection report for items that you included on your 7-year capital needs estimate. Last but not least, remember to consult with the owner. Believe it or not, you are ready to complete the Budget tab. Columns C, D, and E are current year's actual income and expenses, the estimated income and expenses for the remainder of the year, and the total estimated income and expenses for year end. These columns have been populated when you created your new Bud Rep. If this is your first time preparing a budget, these columns will be blank. That's okay. Next, column F is where you enter the proposed budget. Column G will calculate for you the difference between the proposed budget and the current year end estimate. Column H will calculate the percentage change from the proposed budget to the year end estimate. Do not worry about completing column J. Agency staff will complete the approved budget column and return it to you in a Bud Rep that you will use for the upcoming year. I want to call your attention to the Budget Notes tab. It now contains 4 questions that must be answered before you can exit the Bud Rep. The 4 questions added to the Budget Note tabs are questions that, if not specified in the notes, required clarification with the owner agent, thereby adding time to the budget review and approval process. The questions added are as follows. Specify vacancy rate used in the budget. List the management fee amount being charged and specify, using the drop-down, if it is per unit per month, percentage of what collected income, or a combination of the two. Note you will need to specify in the additional notes what the income source the percentage is totaling. Example, 5% of non-housing income, 5% of collected income, etc. Next question, are you requesting a 2-tiered rent increase? If yes in the drop-down, complete that section on the Rent Table tab. Final question, have you submitted utility allowance backup documentation? Use an NA in the drop-down for 100% Section 8 properties, or if the owner pays all utilities. Now let's look at the additional notes section on this tab. If you see a line up on the Budget tab that includes specifying notes in parentheses, include the detail requested on the Budget Notes tab under the Additional Notes area. Agency staff will reference this tab for your explanation. For example, other income on line 18 could include multiple revenue sources. Budget Notes is where you communicate specifically what your other income sources are. In this example, the development collects income from laundry. Not all line items provide you with a reminder to specify a note. Any assumptions that you make for your budget should be detailed on the Budget Notes tab. Here's a good test to see if something should be included in the Budget Notes. If you need to describe to someone unfamiliar with the property what is in each line item because there are multiple types of income or multiple expense items listed on one line item, then it should be added to the Budget Notes. If you have made an assumption, detail how you came up with the assumption. Finally, any significant variances from the current year to the proposed budget year should include an explanation in the Budget Notes as well. If you have questions about what to include on which income and expense lines, be sure to reference the Explanations tab for a full description. Here are some reminders. For developments that are 100% subsidized or a 2-tiered rent increase is requested, remember to complete the rent table and indicate what funding source applies to which unit. For developments that use a manual gross potential rent, complete the rent matrix. Remember to indicate on the rent table what funding programs apply to which unit. Submit a utility allowance schedule, which is not applicable for 100% subsidized properties or where the owner pays all utilities. The 4 questions on the top of the Budget Note tab must be completed before you will be able to exit and save the Bud Rep. Provide detailed budget notes, which are helpful for agency staff as described in the previous slide. If you type in a number on the budget line item that says specify in notes, remember to provide the detail and budget notes tab. The more detail you provide, the less staff will need to request additional information from you. A few common error agency staff have seen include putting front desk or service coordinator expenses on line 29, other administration. These expenses actually belong on line 35, unique operating expenses. If the property has either Holman units or Merriff units, pay special attention to this slide. For Holman units, the monthly amount of rent charged to the resident as well as the subsidy from the PHA needs to be reported on line 4, miscellaneous rent potential, and the MPHA payment received for the Holman units needs to be reported on line 18, other income. The common error is to include both on line 1, apartment rent potential. The monthly amount of rent charged for the non-Holman units is all that should be reported on line 1. Section 8, vacancy claim reimbursement should not be listed on line 18. Vacancy claims are reported on line 6, apartment vacancy, with a negative sign on the monthly operating report. Estimated budget numbers for developments receiving Merriff operating subsidy and Section 236 developments that receive excess income should be listed on line 18 of the budget. Break down these numbers in the budget notes by specifying the amounts and the source of funds. A few more common errors include line 81, annual partnership distribution should be blank. Line 83, do not budget asset management fees and other partnership expenses and interest on the deferred loans. Accrued partnership fees and interest on deferred loans should be reported on the monthly operating reports on line 76 and 83. For the adjustments that appear in line 77 through 94, note which line items should be entered as positive or negative. A plus or minus sign appears in the parentheses after each line item. Line 94 should reflect the interest earned on escrow and reserve accounts held by Minnesota Housing. You will need to submit the following to Minnesota Housing. Workbook that shows the current date on the instructions tab. When naming the file, follow the naming protocol of name of development 2024 BUD. For our sample budget that we have used during this tutorial, the file name would be Sample Apartments 2024 BUD. Make a note that the file has a .xlsm extension. If it does not, you may not be using the correct version. Section 1 of this tutorial describes how to copy data from a previous BUD rep file. Finally, remember to submit the utility allowance schedule with the numbers being used for the property circled or highlighted. Budgets must be submitted via box.com and uploaded to the property's budget folder. If you need to change your current access, you will need to complete and submit a new access form. Contact your asset manager if you need help obtaining a new form. If your box.com account does not include a folder for your development, your asset manager can assist you with adding the property. This concludes Section 3. You should now be ready to complete your budget. Thank you for listening to this tutorial on changes and updates for submitting a successful 2024 operating budget. If you have questions or have notes about the budget that you want to review in more detail, please refer to the information listed on this slide to contact the asset manager assigned to your property. The names, email addresses, and phone numbers are also listed under the Rental Housing Owners and Property Managers page of Minnesota Housing's website at www.minnesotahousing.gov.